prime thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm Ted Nguyen. That's Marshall Newhouse. The Raiders are coming off a bad loss to the Commanders, and the Bears are coming off a resounding win against the Cowboys, but the Raiders are looking to get things back on track. So today we are going to preview the game, talk about what we're looking for when the Raiders have the ball, what we're looking for when the Bears have the ball. But first, we're going to look back at the Commanders game, go through our notes after getting a look at the All-22 and just talking about things that we want to see change or the Raiders need to get changed in order for them to take the next step. And no one's better at doing it than Marshall Newhouse, who has experience in the trenches. What did you see?
Yeah, listen, everyone is piling on the Raiders and their offensive line, both the situation with JPJ and then just ultimately their performance. And listen, as a former offensive lineman, when we didn't play well, we were, our hardest critics. And so it's justified right now. They're not a cohesive unit. They're not necessarily a physical, consistent unit. And they're, a big reason why this offense just can't get off the ground, from the running game with Jeanty and the pass protection with Geno. And despite that, Geno's not throwing for a lot of picks, but he's just under duress. And Jeanty is having to make magic just to get 3.5 yards a carry. So a lot has to change. I think we saw a press conference yesterday or today where Pete said that JPJ is going to continue at right guard and not move to center. He's going to continue to compete with Alex Kappa, which, listen, I have thoughts about, the musical chairs of old linemen and what that can do for guys' progress and development. But also the fact that he's still, as a rookie, in competition with Alex Kappa, it's hard to say what that really means and how they feel about it. Maybe they just don't want to anoint him yet, despite him having playing time last year. But yeah, some things have to be figured out. I think Brendan Carroll deserves some of the critique. I'm sure they're figuring out interiorly, and from a scheme standpoint and just coaching up the fundamental standpoint. But as we'll talk about, just looking at the first two drives against Washington, so many things left out there from a production standpoint where if they're on the same page, even if it's not perfect, there's some big plays to be had.
Real quick, what do you think about the fact that they're shutting the door on moving JPJ to center? I think that's probably the right move. I mean, I think I like JPJ at guard, and I think we saw some improvement from Meredith from week 2 to week 3. I mean, it's not where you want it to be yet, but I think that's something that they're trying to develop. And I feel like his skill sets does fit best as a center.
Yeah, what it feels like is Pete and the coaching staff are very resolute in keeping guys in one positioning and letting them get comfortable. Because what can happen for a young lineman, even though, when I was in the league, they preach versatility and all that stuff, but you do lose out because there's just limited amount of reps. And so keeping him in one place to really get comfortable, really hone his craft, I think is their focus, and not rushing him to play center when there's a whole different skill set and performance needed. Setting the line, setting the protection, calling out the mic, especially on the road, having a silent snap. There's a lot more things that go into which he's shown he can do. But I understand wanting him to get some consistency at one spot and not moving multiple guys around.
That's a big thing too. We talk about the need for communication, and it's not going to happen when you're just constantly shuffling. So I kind of agree with Pete there. And you said there were big plays that were left on the field. What were some examples of some plays that the Raiders could have had if they just didn't mess up at a spot here and there?
Yeah, I watched the whole game, but I mean, it just starts with the first two drives. We'll go to the second drive where, the first play is a play action, kind of a quick zone run cell, and Glaze just doesn't take an aggressive enough set, doesn't get into the defensive end, gives up a short corner. Geno steps up and immediately Glaze gets shed, first down, sack. And then you're moving into the second play, where it's a run play, kind of a wind back play to Jeanty. They bring Jacoby Myers from like a bunch wing formation to kind of be the insert player. And Alex Kappa actually makes a really good combo bump over. He bumps the nose tackle over, and that play that you want to set at like you're running a zone, and then the ball is winding back, cutting back most likely. So you hit his hip and you knock him over. He gets a knockdown for that, truly. But what happens is Wagner, who's a savvy vet in the run game, sees that and then screams over the top and messes up Kappa's leverage and makes the tackle. And so, yes, he got the good initial block, but if a guy's running free, then what's the point? And so, just like that, second play, you're in third and long again after the promising potential first drive, you get points, and third and long, they're in these spinner looks again. So this time, they're in, they've got multiple DBs on the field. You see Alex Kappa point left, his arms there for a while. It looks like a four-man slide to the left. Everyone seems to be on the same page except for Meredith. Kappa slides left. They run a stunt on the left side. Von Miller and Luvu back out in his own coverage. And Meredith just stays too long with the D tackle crossing his face and doesn't keep sliding. And there's pressure immediately. And then you zoom out to the wide look. Washington is trying to sprint to play this kind of quarter half look, it looks like, where you've got two deep DBs on the right side and then one half safety on the left side. Tre Tucker is on a dead sprint vertical and gets over the top with his speed. And if Geno has a clean pocket to step up into, that's a touchdown. I mean, not even close. That he's past the DB, Geno's got the ball, he lays it out there, it's a touchdown. So after the explosive play on the first play of the game, they get down in the red zone, stub their toe with some rough blocking, rough execution, and they kick a field goal. On this drive, yeah, they're in third and long, but there's a play to be had, and the protection breaks down, and not for any magical reason that the Commanders are doing anything. Just a miscommunication, a misexecution of a four-man slide, pretty basic stuff. They weren't doing anything crazy, and Geno has to check the ball down, and they're punting again. So this happens over and over again in a game where it was, again, we talked about this on Sunday, it was 10-10 with like 3 minutes left in the half. I mean, there were opportunities everywhere, and so that's got to be both frustrating because these small things are going wrong, but also slightly encouraging because you're like, there's plays to be had. This is not just we can't do anything ever. We're not outmatched all the time, but there are plays to be had. But I think offensive line, the communication, the physicality initially in the run game, and awareness and working together on your combo blocks, the actual physicality in the run blocking and protection. That first drive that they had like this middle stunt, this middle pirate where Kappa oversets and opens his inside foot, doesn't pass the game off, center gets picked. So just physicality and aggressiveness with pass protection is passive and then aggressive. I was always taught. Yes, you're reacting to them, but it can be aggressive. You can be really physical, and there's guys missing that memo. But again, they have opportunities there, and so I get Pete Carroll wanting to, hey, let's keep guys where they're at. Let's just do our jobs better and give Ashton Jeanty and Geno Smith and this receiving core more opportunities, a little bit more time to make plays because there's play to be had. Then when things are working, you have a better idea of why they're not working if the protection is there more times than it's not. But right now, they can't get anything started.
Yeah, and I think you alluded to it, but they got hit by the same blitz twice and got a free runner right up the middle twice. Yep. And again, it's not that hard. I'm saying it, but then like it's you're an empty protection, and when you're an empty protection on the weak side, you got to pick up the most dangerous. And Parham, and they're showing it before the snap too. Parham ended up going to the D tackle, and then you end up with two guys on a D tackle because the end drops out on that side. So Colton Miller is on a D tackle too, and then Bobby Wagner's just going straight up the middle, right up the A gap twice, and like. Yeah, if it happens once, okay, but it happens twice in the game, that's unacceptable.
And there's got to be awareness on the individual level, but there's just got to be an understanding that when you're in an obvious pass situation, they're in these odd looks. Like, hey, when Bobby Wagner and Luvu and Von Miller are out there roaming around, they're not straight rushing you most likely. So everybody's setting back and on the same level gives us a chance to pass off all the games and all the movement. We used to have to scream in practice If I'm a tackle and my DN drops and I got a looping out, contain D tackle, I'm yelling go, 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 or over, whatever the word is, just to let everyone else know that they can bump back, bump back. And you're reacting to one guy's call, but everyone's got to have vision, peripheral vision. And it feels like some of that feel is missing. And a lot of that is preparation. And so I do wonder how they're preparing in the film room with Coach Brennan Carroll for these moments, because they look to be not on the same page. And I've said that before, and I got some people in the X comments like, "What do you mean they're not prepared?" I'm like, "That's what I'm seeing. That's what it looks like. Is that one guy is thinking about protection one way, and the other guy is thinking about a whole different way. And meanwhile, they're splitting double teams, and there's guys running free in Gino's lap. So I don't know what you're seeing that I'm not seeing, but they don't seem to be on the same page. And there's a lot that we don't know, not being in the film room and not being in that meeting room, but that's what's showing up on Sundays.
Yeah, and it's NFL. If guys see that on tape, you're going to see it over and over and
Yep.
over again until you could stop it. Another issue, and it's not like a fix it all, but the Raiders' run game is very static right now. They're using some shifts and like moving tight ends across formation, stuff like that, but they're not using any snap at the motion, any motion at the snap. So you're not using a fly sweep to like get linebackers to move and bump. And all the really good running teams, they all use these type of motions to displace linebackers to make
Yes.
them a little less aggressive. Like you mentioned, Bobby Wagner streaming over the top of a double team. Like when you use motion, they slow down. Like stuff like that gets slowed down because linebackers have to think. I think the one time they used a fly motion, they got their best run on Ashton Jeanty 18-yard run. So that's some things that the offensive coordinator can do to help out the offensive line a bit. Another thing is like Michael Mayer is going to be in concussion protocol. We're not sure if he's coming back. So you're missing your blocking tight end. Ian Thomas is the other guy, but he's just not that good.
Yeah.
So they involved Brock Bowers in line a little bit more than they have in the
Yeah.
past 3 games. But I feel like, like you have to find a way to make his life easier. Like you
Yeah.
have to find different block. Like you're not going to ask him to block a defensive end 9 out of 10 times. You have to find different ways. Like use them on a crack block. Give him help. Find plays where he could down block to a linebacker, make it a little bit easier for him. So those are the things you have to think about when you're Chip Kelly. And I think the Colts do a great job with Tyler Warren, their rookie tight end, who's not a great inline blocker as well, but they find so many different ways to make his life easier. And you could create more explosives that way because now Brock Bowers is matched up on a linebacker instead of a nickel or a safety. So those are the things I want to see from the Raiders coming into this game. Final note for me is I like Dante Thornton, but I would want to see Jack Besh involved in the offense a little bit more because I just feel like he could be a little bit multifaceted more than Dante Thornton is right now. And I know his skill set kind of clashes with Jacoby Myers a little bit, but I mean, you can make it work. More condensed formations, just teams that make multiple slots work at the same time.
Yeah, there's a lot you said there that was great. First of all, with the pre-snap motion, like using a guy like Tre Tucker, who, if you have someone who is known for his speed and he's a speedy guy, sending him on jet motions, even if you only hand it off once every 3 or 4 games, again, it's called eye candy for a reason. It gets them thinking about one extra thing. But when you have these static looks, they're able to play more downhill. You're more predictable. That is harder on the offensive line. Even that first drive, and transitioning to like Brock Bowers as an inline blocker, they're running zone to the left, but the Commanders kind of reduced the front to the 2 tight end side pre-snap, or the 1 tight end side pre-snap. Well, Jack Besh is kind of in a hip alignment, and what teams that run a lot of that stuff, you look at the Rams, they do this a lot. They'll use a guy like Puka and Cooper, a guy that Jack Besh can do is from a run blocking from a receiver standpoint, and you insert him and you have him either chip or you reduce the angle. Well, Brock Bowers, after the reduction, loses the angle on the defensive end. The defensive end ends up making the tackle backside when they could have had Besh insert through, chip his shoulder on the way to the DB who's off the ball, who's less of a threat. And so little stuff like that all over the field. We're not asking Brock Bowers to be George Kittle because he's not going to be, but he is a threat. And you alluded to Tyler Moore and the Colts. a lot of these teams, Buffalo using 12 personnel, it can be done. These are not all world blocking tight ends. They're all these kind of hybrid guys, some better blockers, some better receivers, but you've got to be able to put them in positions to be successful and not stagnant, stationary spots, because you will lose more times than not, and teams will start to pick up on trends more times than not. And then, yeah, absolutely. I think Best needs more run. Thornton seems to be kind of so far not very versatile in his route tree. So you get Tre Tucker, who can take the top off the defense more often. You get Jacoby Myers and Jack Best, who can win underneath with savviness from Myers and physicality from Jack Best. You have layers, including Brock Bowers, as he continues to heal for passing concepts. If everything's going deep and there's less underneath, yeah, you have that variety, but if the protection is not going to get any better and you're not going to do much for the protection, you need layers. You need guys on short shallows. You need guys on late deep ends. You need guys who taking seams and deep balls like Tre Tucker. So versatility, I think, is what Best offers you right now for this offense, and they need to do something different for sure if they're going to challenge what we're about to talk about in the Chicago Bears, which as a defense that can be had. So going into this week, there's got to be some more creativity about getting your guys open in a more consistent way.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into that Bears game. Bears coached by Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen's there, defensive coordinator. They had two rough opening games against the Vikings, who to me have the top defense in the league, and the Detroit Lions, who have probably the best offense in the league and a very strong defense as well. Caleb, to me, played a lot better than people gave him credit for in those first two games. And then he kind of put it all together against the Cowboys, who have a terrible defense, and threw 4 touchdowns and showed out. And the Raiders are catching him right after that strong performance. So, I think if you haven't watched Caleb Williams this season yet, he's made some major strides, and he looks like, he looks like he can fulfill that promise of being a number 1 pick. So, what are we looking for when the Bears offense has the ball?
Yeah, listen, Caleb is improving week to week. His decision making is getting better, and yeah, he has these plays where his instincts, kick in. He takes off, and it looks like he's palming the ball. Looks like it's a little erratic. That still ain't going to be in him, but I feel like he's trusting Ben Johnson more. They're doing more things that allow him just easy 1-2 reads to get the ball out of his hands and gets him in rhythm. But they're playing 11 and 10 personnel, which is 3 receivers or more over 55% of the time. So they're going to challenge this backfield. We'll see if the Raiders are in a lot of nickel, a lot of dime. I think Eric Stokes, Blue Kelly, and Darian Porter are going to be challenged. Roma Dunze is coming up as well. He's a favorite target of Caleb. And Ben Johnson did not forget how to coach ball, y'all. So he's going to find these weak spots. He's going to challenge the defensive backs. Eric Stokes has had a little bit better of season than it feels like, but Blue Kelly is struggling for sure against, when he's getting targeted. And so they're going to be put stress on the defensive backfield, and that comes into, can the Raiders get pressure? These things work hand in hand. Max Crosby's getting doubled quite a bit, so there's going to have to be some production additions for Malcolm Kuntz and Tyree. So somewhere along the defensive line, someone's going to have to produce when Max is getting doubled, and he's still beating his double teams at a really good clip. But someone's going to have to show up to put pressure on this Bears offense that I think is ascending. He's still a young quarterback in Caleb, but he's going to have moments where he flashes, and you want to mess up his clock, get him kind of feeling pressure from his backside, even if it's not always getting to him, and that speeds up his clock and makes him more of an erratic quarterback.
Yeah, the one weak area in this Bears offensive line is their left tackle, Braxton Jones, and that's where Malcolm Kuntz is rushing a lot. So Kuntz has been struggling a little bit, but I think this is the week where, he could put a stamp on the game, especially against Braxton Jones. And if he can't do it, then I'm sure they'll move Max Crosby over there to match up on him. This Bears offense is a lot different than what Ben Johnson ran with the Lions. They like to attack downfield a lot more, which makes sense. With Jared Goff, he's better at those quick passes, choice routes, and getting yak and those sorts of things. He only averaged about 6.6 air yards per target, and Caleb Williams is averaging 8.9 air yards per target. He's looking downfield, and it's a lot of the same concepts, but he's calling the ones that get downfield a little bit more often. And Caleb he's waiting for these routes to develop. Whereas Goff, like if he sees you drop deep, he's going to check the ball down to
Mhm.
Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to run for get like 10 yards after the catch. Caleb is waiting for these routes to develop, and he's throwing tight window throws downfield, attacking the middle of the field. So those linebackers have to be very disciplined because Caleb is going to challenge those linebackers down the middle of the defense. So I think as far as schematically, I think they need to switch it up a little bit more. They're running a ton of cover three, which is kind of his Pete Carroll's signature. But I just think they have to use a little bit more movement with their safeties to try to get Caleb Williams to hold the ball. Because when he does hold the ball, that's when you get those turnover opportunities. It's been a lot less than it. Caleb is not doing that as much as he did last season. He only does it about 3-4 times a game, whereas maybe last season he did 10, 15 times a game or whatever it is. They'll make him hold the ball, and that's when you could get some of those turnover opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned the matchups on linebackers. I think you're going to start seeing more from Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland for
Yeah.
the Bears. Those are guys that Ben Johnson really likes to get involved with tight ends, but he wants to establish a run presence first. And Colson Loveland, I think, is closer to Brock Bowers in that he's not known for his blocking, but he's a threat if you just can do the bare minimum in 12 personnel on the end of the line of scrimmage. He can be a really dangerous weapon, especially matched up against linebackers who aren't used to covering a guy of that athleticism. And I think Devin White has had a little bit of fall from week one. There are multiple times against Washington where he was late to fill or he overruns the hole and he's kind of a step slow a little bit, and that includes in play action. So I think he might be a guy they target with the tight ends. But again, yeah, running these long developing plays, the protection has to hold up, and that is where I think the Raiders have an opportunity to make Caleb's life a little bit more difficult, especially if they can get him in second and medium to long and third and long. So it'll be very interesting to see how they attack. These are two units defensively that are trying to find themselves. I mean, this is a new coordinator for the Raiders. They're trying to figure things out. It looks very much like they're figuring things out on the fly. They're playing a ton of zone because I just think that allows you more room for error. But the better the quarterbacks and coordinators you come up against, they're going to carve the zone up. We've seen it forever in the NFL, and so you've got to find a way to mix the coverage up, mix the rotations up pre-snap, and then eventually throw in some, it could be zone man combos or just man cover two underneath, over top, and just make the looks a little bit different from pre-snap to post-snap.
Yeah, and you mentioned they're a big 11 personnel team with 3 receivers on a field team. But last week they did try to get Colston Loveland involved in the game plan a little bit more than he has been. He's dealing with the injury right now, so that's something to watch out for if he does play. Because if he does play, I'm sure they'll mix in more 12 personnel looks like you mentioned. Another thing they did last week that they didn't really do the first 2 weeks was they ran some zone read with Caleb Williams.
Mm.
Um, and if they saw the film against the Commanders, they're
Oh yeah.
probably gonna do that again and get some zone read going against the Raiders. So that's something else they have to watch out for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked about it already. The Raiders, at times just kind of look lost as if they forgot Marcus Mariota can run. That's not something you can have be a liability against this week with Caleb Williams, knowing that's been so much of his game, especially once you put it on film. So they'll be prepared. There might be some answers as far as banjoing a linebacker or kind of replacing linebackers and defensive ends in gap, where the defensive end kind of crashes and the linebacker plays over top to the running back, the mesh side, or just having better awareness on your defensive end of slow playing the read. So it's one more thing, because when that's an option, when that can be run, that slows down the defensive end. He's got to have more things to think about. Again, this is what we talked about, giving defenders more things they have to consider on a down-to-down basis. But yeah, there's something that can be coached. You do your best to either force the handoff or take away the handoff and make Caleb run it all day, which he's capable of, but I don't think that's the world they want to live in. And so yeah, they watched that Mariota film, and there's definitely going to be some things that Ben Johnson has drawn up.
Yeah, that's gonna be a thing you watch out for, like, on a 3rd and 2 situation or a red zone situation. That's when they typically, unveil that, like, run option package.
Yeah.
Alright, let's talk about what we're watching out for when the Raiders have the ball. Like I mentioned, Dennis Allen's the defensive coordinator. He philosophically wise, he wants to be a man-to-man type of defense, which is what he did with, the Saints for all those years.
Mhm.
But and he's trying to run some cover 1 with the Bears, but I don't think he has the horses, especially with, Jalen Johnson out for the season, so he's resorting to playing a lot of cover 2 zone. But regardless of that, what are you looking for when when the Raiders have the ball?
Well, listen, you've heard the saying, an immovable force versus uh, uh, what is it? I don't know what the saying is.
Movable object?
Immovable objects. Well, this is the opposite of that because you've got the Chicago defense that is last in running back rush yards before contact allowed, and you've got the Raiders offense, which is last in running back yards before contact allowed. And so there's an offensive line that's given up a lot of penetration. It's not let Jeanty get momentum and off and running. And this is a defense that allows a lot of you know vertical penetration for offensive lines and running units. So if the Raiders are going to really figure this thing out and get some movement in the run game, get Jeanty going, it's going to be this week. And if you start to have real serious questions and doubts about where this unit could go if it doesn't work this week. So to me, those are two quote unquote weaknesses, but something that the Raiders offense can exploit in this Chicago defensive front.
Yeah, the Cowboys do have a very physical interior with, Tyler Smith and Booker, but, man, this is the Bears defensive tackle, Gervon Dexter Sr., Grady Jarrett, they're on the floor, they're getting pushed back a lot. Like, you gotta be able to move the ball against this front, and I think, their line Tremaine Edmonds is a good linebacker, so
Yeah.
I think you have to find some ways and to move his eyes a little bit, and I think pre-snap, motion will help with that, but their defensive line gets moved around, so this is the front where you need to get Ashton Jeanty, to going against. And one thing we didn't talk about was just the fact that Glaze has looked like he's regressed a lot, especially in pass protection. Montez Sweat is not like a number one pass rusher like a Max Crosby type, but he's still a quality pass rusher with a mean bull rush,
Yes.
which which Glaze really struggled with against Von Miller. So I think this is a game where you need to help Glaze in different ways. What are some of the ways that you think the Raiders can help out DJ Glaze?
Yeah, obviously there's presence from tight end running back chips, and then just the alignment of a tight end or running back. But personally, watching his sets, it feels like he's floating more than he
Yeah.
originally was. And so, when I mean floating, he's taking his original 1, 2, 3 kicks, and then there's not like a, a physicality at the contact point with the defensive end, either a punch or a grab or something like that. Feels like he's catching and he's retreating, continuing to retreat. And there's a few times against Von Miller where Von Miller got a soft edge, and yeah, Glaze runs him by at 8.5, 9 yards, but it could have been a much firmer pass block situation. And to me, that's just a confidence thing. There are moments where I lulled myself into that just because you're worried about a guy's athleticism, but you got to have the confidence just to take your set, get to your spot, and then engage, bring the fight to the defensive end and the pass rusher. And I think he's got to get back to that. He's got the athleticism. You want to see consistent explosion out of his stance. He's got the athleticism to get to, we call his spot. But when he gets to a spot, he's got to engage with some physicality and bad intentions. And that's been missing in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if he's thinking a lot or just over analyzing the rushers in front of him. But yeah, he has taken a couple steps back, and Montez Sweat is a pretty dynamic pass rusher, but a guy who you can get into his body. He's a bigger body guy than Von Miller was last week, and you can get into him with your arms, independent hand usage, all that stuff. So Glaze had a chance to kind of get reestablish himself as a tackle who's kind of finding his way. Hopefully, he doesn't take any more steps back because they need him for sure.
Yeah, and I think you get the ball outside on this Bears defense a little bit, like with some crack tosses.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they've really attempted to do that with Ashton Jeanty yet, but I think that needs to be in a playbook against this type of defense.
Yeah, I
All
would
right,
love to
let's
see some. Yeah, sorry to interrupt on that. Like some pin and pulls, gap schemes. I mean, a variety from Chip Kelly to use Ashton Jeanty, to use the athleticism of your line, and just change the looks up. So yeah.
Yeah, the first play the Cowboys ran, I think it was like a 17-yard run off of a pin and pull type of concept. So, um, and Chip Kelly has those type of concepts in his playbook. So we want to see that.
Mhm.
Let's talk about matchups. What's the key matchup you're looking for in this game?
I'm thinking about Rome Odunze versus Darren Porter or Eric Stokes. He's kind of having a breakout moment. He kind of, as his rookie year, he and Caleb are figuring things out. But last week, caught the flea flicker. He feels like a receiver who's going to be someone to be reckoned with. And again, this defensive backfield for the Raiders is figuring things out. There's a lot of thinking, a lot of movement going on. And so they're going to have to really keep an eye on him because Ben Johnson really wants to get Caleb and he on the same page, and there's a lot of explosive potential there.
Yeah, I would imagine they're gonna throw a couple deep shots at Caillou Blue with Dunze matched up over there. And he's like a true X type that could win on the outside. We saw that in his Washington tape, and we're seeing some of that this season. So that's definitely something to watch out for. I'm watching out for Caleb Williams against Devin White. Like I mentioned, you mentioned they're probably gonna highlight Devin White as the guy they want to attack in the passing game. So I want to see him be able to stay disciplined, cover those tight ends, cover those crossers, be where you're supposed to be because Caleb's going to want to get the ball behind you.
Mhm.
X factors. What are you thinking?
X factor. Listen, we'll keep saying it until you know he shows that somehow he shouldn't have been talked about in camp and moving forward is Tre Tucker. Um, He's had moments where he's streaming down the field, his arm up, and they can't get him the ball. And then later in that Washington game, he was getting the ball over the place and led the league in receiving yards. So he's got that kind of talent and potential. And you just hope that they can devise ways to get him open because then imagine him with some explosive gains in the first half. That opens up all the other neat stuff to Bowers, who's been struggling getting open because of his knee. Well, if there's less onus and eyes on him, then these underneath things will open up a little bit more. Same with Jacoby Myers, same with potentially Jack Besh. And so to me, Tre Tucker continue to be a focus because he's producing. He is not a focus because he is owed something. He is producing. He's getting open. He's becoming a threat. Teams are having to account for him. And so that means a lot for an offense.
Yeah, I agree. There are some secondary issues with this Bears backfield right now. So there's some opportunities for him to get behind the secondary if they're able to get the time to block for him. And I gotta imagine if watching the film and watching Tre Tucker get open this much, you got to find ways to get him the ball. My X factor, I would say Malcolm Kuntz. Like we mentioned, the Bears want to get these passes downfield. Braxton Jones is a not playing too well, so I think him on the backside getting some pressure on Caleb Williams could be a huge key in this game.
Yeah, definitely. He's got a lot of room to grow and just physicality at the point of attack to show us and then hand usage. He's not as big as Crosby, but he's got to get better with his hands and get off of blocks, make offensive linemen stay true and continue their set with technique. And again, Max Crosby, so much of his success is from being relentless. He's an elite athlete, but yeah, he gets called hustle sacks, but they're sacks because he's just foaming at the mouth, and you want to see more of that from Malcolm Kuntz because so much of the offensive line ethos is to really scrap and claw. But if the guy outworks you, and there's coverage over the top, especially with the zone they're playing and a young quarterback, there's moments where you could really affect the pocket and affect the release, and then potentially get sacks if you're the guy opposite Max Crosby who's getting so much attention.
Yeah, I agree. So he's coming back from that ACL, but we got to see more from Coots. Let's talk about predictions. What are you thinking?
Listen, I think this is as good of a matchup as Raiders going to have for the next few games. They really have got to find a way to reestablish themselves. They look solid against the Patriots, but the Patriots we're seeing aren't a great team. And so this is a moment against a team that's ascending. I wouldn't call them a good or great team, the Bears, but a moment to really reestablish the fundamentals. The fundamentals being if you're going to run inside zone, if you're going to run these basic running concepts, move the line of scrimmage, create lanes for Ashton Jeanty, open up the play action game, let Geno kind of do what he can do. This is the week to do that. And so I have the Raiders 23, Chicago 17. Listen, Ben Johnson's a hell of a coach, a hell of a coordinator. He's going to have some stuff dialed up. But I think if the Raiders can get out to a solid lead and get some drives put together, they've shown the propensity to have explosive gains and put points up as an offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see improvement from the Raiders, but I don't think they're quite there yet, especially with Brock Bowers having that big brace on his knee. Until Bowers is at 100%, I think it's going to be tough for this team to reach anywhere close to their ceiling. And Pete Carroll said he'll probably have that brace on his knee for the next couple of weeks. But I think we'll see some improvement, especially against a very bad Bears defensive line. I think Ben Johnson's going to probably dial some good stuff up against this defense. So I'm going to say Raiders lose this game 27-24, but we see a little bit of progress.
All right.
Yeah, so we got two different picks. That probably means that you're going to be right, and the Raiders win this game.
Wait. So last week I predicted the points right, but I just or the Raiders points right, but the Commanders just overshot them by like 20. So I'm house half right. So let's see what happens this week.
Yeah, but I think it was tougher anyway to see Marcus Mariota putting up those points against a defense that was playing pretty well before week 3.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you for joining. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Thanks, Marshall, for being here and giving your insight. And we'll talk to you guys after the game on Sunday.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.